I gotta say, this might be the first time you've ever heard of someone having this experience, but when you hear about it, you will understand why all of this has come together. So I'm really excited to introduce you to Karina Allison. She is an expert volcanologist. Am I saying that right?
Volcanologist.
Volcanologist,
Yeah.
retreat leader, and sovereignty mentor for science-minded mystics. So after actually being struck by lightning on the slopes of, oh, I'm not going to say it right. What
Kilauea.
volcano is this? I had it in my
Kilauea.
brain. Kilauea.
Yeah.
Kilauea. She was initiated into the mysteries and powers of the earth and works with the elemental realm in the intersection of mythology, consciousness, and divine feminine. And we love that kind of thing here. So I know there's way more to your story, but I think we kind of need to start there because that is often a joke where people say, you know, you have a better chance of X, or you have a better chance of being struck by lightning than X, and then you actually got struck by lightning. So can we start there?
Yeah, perfect. And that really is the pivot point when I look back at my life. I mean, that really was that defining moment where everything changed for me in an instant. And long story short, I was 29 when that happened. That was 11 years ago. So now I'm dating myself. And I had just left my husband, and I had, had a great education. I had just finished a master's degree. I had offers on the table. I had grants. I had this whole scientific career that I was pursuing. And then I was also unearthing a lot of childhood trauma memories. I'm actually an incest survivor. And so all of this was coming to a head at the same time. And I had this message really clearly to go to the Big Island. And that it was like, you can't call yourself a volcano scientist if you haven't been to the Big Island and met Pele. And even volcano scientists talk about Pele, this force of the volcano. She's the goddess who lives in Kilauea volcano. And there's a lot of mysterious aspects of Big Island and Kilauea volcano, even to the scientists. And so bought a one-way ticket and just kind of went without a plan, and was, when I look back, that was my deepest, like darkest time, like bottom of the barrel time. Like I just felt so lost and broken, and I would go out to the volcano and pray. And I didn't really even have a language for that. I grew up Catholic, but as a kid, I was really tuned into these other realms. I never really considered myself, Catholic in the sense that, maybe my family would have wanted me to be. But I was having, experiences as a young child, imaginary friends that I remember as actual memories. It was not imaginary to me. Seeing dead people, having conversations like that. And, of course, being told like, oh, that's just your imagination. You just have an overactive imagination. And I'm kind of weaving around here, but long story short, yeah, I was praying in the language that I knew how at that time. And there was a moment at I'd only been there a couple of weeks, and I had a visitation by a being who introduced herself as Kali. And I didn't know who Kali was at that time. And she said, you've been praying to Pele, but Pele is a manifestation of me. And I'm here. And it was like this wind that moved through my body, like I felt it on my organs. And it was probably 2 days later after that event that there was this crazy lightning storm. I've never seen anything like it in my whole life. I mean, people still talk about where they were during that lightning storm. Everybody remembers it. And yeah, I was secondarily struck, so I don't think I would have survived the initial strike. It was so powerful. But I was about 15 feet away from it, and I was chopping an onion, and I had a giant butcher knife in my hand. and everything exploded. I mean, it was literally like a bomb had gone off in this moment, and the air had changed around me. I had the recognition that we were getting struck by lightning in the moments before it happened. It was like suddenly the air changed, and you could sort of feel like you could swim through it. It was popping. And so I had this giant butcher knife in my hand, and I just, in that split second, put my hands up to my ears, and this knife is sticking up like a tuning fork out of the side of my head. And in that split second, then it was like, I got hit over the head with a 2x4 and went down. I could feel the electricity go in to the right side of just above my ear on the right side of my head. And I felt it exit through my hip. And in that moment, my very first conscious thought was that I had been given a gift. So some part of me recognized that this was a gift, and the feeling that I had, that I can, it's hard to even describe, but it felt like all of my chakras had just been like burnt out, like blown out, like I had just been relieved of lifetimes of karma, in that moment. And needless to say, so that was really the beginning of my spiritual awakening, and the reopening of these gifts that I had as a child and then had shut down. And they all just came flooding back, this like, extrasensory perceptions, as you might call it. And I will say at that time, it was really overwhelming, because suddenly I was just hearing things and seeing things, beyond that veil that other people weren't necessarily aware of. And I went through a dark night of the soul around it. It was, am I going crazy? What is this? Is this real? How do I know it's real? And over time, I've learned to work with it, and learned that it is really just that my perceptions have been widened, and that this is we all have this ability, and that we are receiving communication from all around us. We're receiving communication from other people that isn't spoken, from animals, from plants, from the natural world. I mean, everything is in its essence electromagnetic. And, of course, lightning being like the powerful, blast of electromagnetism, it was just like it unlocked that those communication channels for me. And so literally from that moment, my life has been different. And I was walking that path of a scientific career, and all the accolades, and innovative research, and all of these things that I was doing. And suddenly I was like, whoa, there's way more to the world, to the earth, than we learn in school. And how do I bridge these understandings that I'm now having with that scientific world? I did stay in the scientific world after that. I even went back, attempted to get a PhD, actually not so long ago. And it was just so apparent that when you start talking about earth consciousness, and, being able to communicate in these ways, and you're in the context of traditional science, especially physics, there's not so much openness to that. That's not a conversation that is very welcomed, I'll say. Yeah, that was a lot there. That was more than just the story, but it's that was
No, it's amazing to have you share that, because we really, I personally don't know anyone that has been struck by lightning. And so even to just have the insight, right, of what that experience is like. And I'm curious too, like, it's because you've done the work on yourself, you're able to talk about what the gifts were to you, and maybe some of the challenges and so on. But literally getting struck in the brain, like on the right side of your brain, did that affect anything? Like, did it take anything from you, or were there certain abilities that maybe you had before that just didn't work the same, or anything along those lines?
Interesting. Yes, it did. Well, I did lose hearing in that year. It has mostly come back. The main struggle that I've had is some like short-term memory things and facial recognition, which I guess that's stored in that temporal lobe. Um, I can meet someone, and if I meet them out of the context that I met them in, I don't necessarily recognize their face right away. And it's caused for a lot of embarrassing moments and shame. And it took me a while to make that connection that, like, oh, that was maybe
Mm,
something that I've been getting better at it. It's something that I actively work on, because that's really important. If you
mhm,
don't remember someone's face, I can remember them really well, but that's, yeah, that's really, those two things are just kind of the two struggles that came out of that. Um, my body changed, like I have a certain level of electricity in my body that's never quite left, and I can,
wow.
yeah, I feel that. And I remember in those days, the first couple days right after it happened, um, just trying to sleep and not being able to sleep, and just having, just, it felt like a symphony moving through my body of these electrical impulses, and just super, like this interesting state of like witnessing myself having this experience. And yeah, I don't think I slept for 48 hours at least after that happened.
Yeah, I can imagine. So how do you work with that energy then? Because I've got to think that it's there to serve you. Like it might actually be fun to play with.
It can be. It took me a long time to work with it, to know how to work with it. I felt very overwhelmed by it for a long time. I felt like I just had so much energy moving through my system that I didn't know how to manage it, or I'm sorry, I've got, my dog is trying to settle here. Okay. Um, how to manage
Mhm.
it, or turn it off. I felt like it was somewhat in control. And so that has just, it's been a decade, and it's really honestly taken me the bulk of that time to feel like, I can learn how to manage this. And I think at the end of the day, it comes down to mind mastery. And I think all of us that are on this path of awakening, there's a certain element of mastery that comes along with that: energetic mastery, emotional mastery, mastery of our thoughts. And um, and and so claiming sovereignty, that's how why I stepped into the sovereignty path and helping people in that way. Because sovereignty is about, it's about all of it. It's about owning your space. It's about owning what you're going to allow in, what thoughts you're going to have, what, you know, not just sovereign in your day-to-day life, which is a part of it, of course, financially sovereign, and sovereign in your health choices, but also sovereignty in your energy field. And I've just become very, very, very aware of my energy and my thoughts, and it's a daily practice to, um, yeah, to stay in a place of balance, I'll say, with those. I hope that answers
Wow.
your
Well,
question.
let's, yeah, absolutely. Let's maybe stick with the sovereignty because that's certainly something that's been in the air. And I love that you've already given some parameters around defining it a little bit more because we're acutely aware of issues with sovereignty right now, given that most of us cannot move around freely. And the ways that we were used to living life, regardless of where in the world we live, right? There's definitely an imposition on our sovereignty and how we're moving our body, and potentially even medical sovereign, like body autonomy and making choices, medically speaking, and a lot of different things. So what what wisdom can we share with people about how to cultivate sovereignty when it seems like there's an imposition on sovereignty?
Whew. Oh, that's such a good question. Yeah, and it's definitely very present in all of our lives right now. Um, yeah, we start thinking about the ways that our sovereignty is being. Um, it's like when your boundaries get pushed, and you're like, okay, I'll allow a little bit, and then there's a little bit more push, and it's just like the push isn't going to stop. That pressure isn't going to let up, and I think we each have to find that that place we can where we are okay giving, and then where we are not okay giving anymore. So coming back
Mm.
into owning what it is true for you. And I know it's easier said than done. Like living a path of truth, I think, is a lifelong journey, because there's so many external influences, and the opinions of our family and the opinions of our friends and the media, and you know even science. I think both, we're so polarized right now, and science, I use that in quotations because it's any outcome can be empowered through science. So I think there's good science and there's bad science, and good science is not attached to an outcome. It's just looking at the data, and it's stripping the lenses away, and any ego attachment, and it's very pure. Um, I think that a lot of times when people talk about science, especially right now in this charged climate, that's not the kind of science that is being referred to. Um, People are using science to, back up that they are right and you are wrong. But then the other side says they have science that says they're right and you're wrong. And so there's this real, we're just being polarized more and more by the day. Um, and so really owning what's true for you, and just letting go of the judgments you might receive, the pushback that you might get, being okay with that, finding that in yourself, that you can be okay with that. It reminds me of this line. I think it's from oh gosh, I can't remember the poem right now, but it's something like I something about betraying. I would rather betray others than betray my own soul. I think I'm butchering that, but it's something along those lines. And I think about that a lot, because we often betray our own soul to make others feel comfortable, or to feel like we're not rocking the boat, or we're doing what we're supposed to. And it's uncomfortable to stand up for our truth sometimes, and I think that's what we're being asked of right now. um, like I'm currently starting a month-long quarantine, just um, these last couple days, because my sister is giving birth, and she's a pediatrician, and she's vaccinated, and body sovereignty is so important to me. And it's my choice that I just haven't wanted the vaccine. And so that's our compromise, is that I'm just going to be in quarantine indefinitely, like for a month, to be there for her birth and the baby. And um, there's a lot of really hard choices that people are having to make right now, and a lot of hard conversations. And I feel like um, I worry about the direction it's going, just in this polarity and this divisiveness that is um, very, we are right and you are wrong. No, we are right and you are wrong. And there's not a lot of middle ground. So sovereignty, being okay with making making choices that other people don't agree with, and just owning it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love that your sister, I mean, not that you have to quarantine. I know you're choosing to do that based on what I'm hearing you say,
Mm.
and you're trying to find that middle ground. But I'm hearing a lot of people saying that they're, people with children are saying that grandma and grandpa can't come and visit unless they've been vaccinated, or brother, siblings like aunt and uncles can't come over unless they've been vaccinated, and never before have we been so fixated on a vaccination and being able to see each other.
I know.
All right, it's kind of astounding to me. And back to your point, and I only share this because I've had people reach out to me and say that they've stopped wearing their masks because they've listened to the show. And it's not always easy to stand up for what we believe in. For me, it's always felt like an act of self-betrayal for me to wear a mask because I'm aware of what the masks represent. So I just negotiate. Everywhere I go, I just negotiate. There's some places I'm not willing to negotiate. I don't need to fight for my way to get into Walmart. Like, Walmart's not appealing to me. I don't give them my business. So I'm not going to go and fight for it for the sake of it. I'm going to save my energy for other things. But anyways, I went to the dentist last Sunday, and the hygienist that I had 4 months prior saw me, and she's like, "I'm so excited to see you. And I just have to tell you, I really admire you not wearing a mask. It must take a lot for you out in the world to not wear one, knowing how people are." And I said, "Thank you. I admire myself too." I
Wow.
said, "Because I have to live with myself." And I'm really grateful that you said that, because it just occurs to me that's really what it is. I'm trying to live a life that I have to share company with myself 24/7. So I need to be living a life that I admire, and I need to feel that what I'm doing is admirable.
Mm.
I'm not looking for any gold stars from anyone because I don't need anyone's approval to
Mhm.
breathe freely. But I do need to live with myself, and I do try to avoid any acts of self betrayal. And I could see her kind of look at me in an astounding way, but that's just my position. And I don't make anyone else wrong if they're choosing something different. Just saying that I'm choosing this, and I, I'm actually okay if people don't, support what I'm choosing, because they don't need to, because it's not their life.
Mm.
But I'm glad that you said that, because it's, I think the need to be right in general in society, we've seen, tends to not end well. It tends to lead to conflict, irrespective of whether we're dealing with what we're dealing with right now. So the fact that we've got all these other impositions just seems kind of wild. So how do we navigate that? How do we navigate these questions right now where people are feeling entitled to ask us about our medical choices, or to impose their beliefs about our medical choices, or anything to do with our choices around our body? How do we lovingly hold our boundaries while also,
Mm.
honoring those relationships?
Mhm. That's a great question. Yeah, I think it's I think there's a somatic um, like impulse that we have to learn to listen to and honor, because our bodies know what feels good and right, and when something doesn't feel right, there's an immediate impulse, you know, like reaction that we have. And I think so many of us are trained out of acknowledging those moments, you know, especially women. We're trained to ignore that and just be nice, or be accommodating, or so that's, for me, something I'm working on, is really being so present in the moment that I can hear those like messages from my body and from my spirit, and that I can honor them in that moment, instead of looking back a couple hours later and like, why didn't I say that, or why didn't I? And it's a practice too. I mean, I'm certainly not perfect at that, but I do find that it is helping me stay in that place of being centered and in my truth. Um, and it's uncomfortable, I part of that is learning to communicate and be unattached to how that lands for someone, and to communicate from the heart in a loving way, not to lash out and be in this place of reactivity or trigger, but to be like, oh, this is my experience right now. This is what's true for me, and not worry about how they're gonna have their reaction to it. And I think that is also very much a practice, because it's not something that we're taught. We're taught the opposite. Um,
Oh, so true. We also, before we started recording, we're talking about, some of the energies that are present on the planet right now. And maybe there's some sense of some things coming down the pipeline, maybe to specific regions or just collectively in general. So, what kind of energies are you seeing right now on the planet, and how do we navigate those?
mm, oh, this question gives me full chills, because there's so much. There's so much right now. I'll start by saying I work with volcanoes and inner earth. So I spend a lot of my meditation, my journey time, um, really feeling in with like the collective consciousness of the planet as a whole, of the planet, and then of us on the planet, which are two different sort of levels of consciousness grid. Um, so where this work has taken me, I want to say the last year and a half, um, I have rediscovered uh, working with obsidian. Obsidian is a volcanic stone, and it's a very unique stone. It's basically frozen magma. So there's really no other stone like it. It's glass, basically. It has no crystalline structure. Most stones are made up of little tiny crystals, but obsidian goes from being molten to being solid so fast that it just freezes and it just turns into this glass. And so energetically, it is holding the frequency of the earth in the purest sense of the earth consciousness. And because it's coming from under the surface, inside of the earth, and it's literally being erupted to the top of the earth where we find it, it carries that energetic imprint of um, going into the underworlds, going into the subconscious, excavating and erupting up, or bringing forth the things that we need to see right now. And so um, I feel like obsidian is a technology. I have had so many downloads about this the last year and a half, 2 years, and it is an ally for us to use in these times, and it has been guiding me and unlocking insights and teachers, um, specifically from the like the Aztec, Toltec traditions, and the obsidian yoni egg, which is what I've been using, because you're actually using it internally as women, and it's very deeply healing. Is an all-woman lineage that's been carried for thousands of years, and is re-emerging, and I would say it's reaching outside of the Mexico area where it's been held, maybe for the first time, where it's really finding a broader audience. And some of their teachings are about the transition from the fifth to the sixth sun. So maybe you've heard of this. The Toltec calendar and the Aztec calendar is a little bit different from the Mayan calendar. And so the Mayan calendar, there was all the big hype around December 21st, 2012. And so specifically, there's a man named Sergio Magana who I'm referring to and talking about these insights. And he has several books out, and he teaches a lot about obsidian. The woman who I would recommend to any of your listeners who want to learn more is Ana Silvia Serrano. And she talks about the obsidian yoni egg and the philosophy behind that. But the energies that both the obsidian and these Toltec traditions are containing is that basically we've been in a transition period from the fifth to the sixth sun that started in 1991, and December 21st, 2012 was the middle point. So it was kind of, where the fifth and the sixth suns were like balanced, like their energies were equal. And then so since 2012, we've been reaching, the fifth sun has been falling away and the sixth sun has been entering its sphere of influence. And part of that process is this, increase in polarity that we're seeing and the duality that we're seeing. But the date, and the reason I bring this up is because the date that it is said to have fully switch is next week, May 26th. And that's a full moon and it's eclipse. And so according to the calendars, the Aztec, Toltec calendars, that is the date that the sixth sun becomes the most dominant and we fall out of the fifth sun. And we're still in a period of transition. And in Sergio Magaña's work, he talks about another 5 years of underworlds that we go through. But we really are at a pivot point. And I know I feel that. I imagine you feel that. Most people I know that are tuned in or are doing the work on these levels are feeling a lot of energy and a lot of downloads coming through right now. To me, the message has been because I've been working with the obsidian so intensely, I've had all of these subconscious things come up. So it's like, okay, now it's time to really clear and integrate and cleanse. And I'm being guided to really take better care of my physical body, to do a really intense cleanse. I'm actually going into a vision quest in a month. And just to do anything that we can to keep our vibration as high as we can. And that includes, being mindful of all of these, like the 5G and all of the frequencies that are being, we don't see those, but they really impact us. And so the cleaner that we can keep our bodies and our thoughts, the more supported we're going to be in this process. And the other message I get is just to not worry and to trust, and that things may not be easy, that it's not necessarily going to look pretty, that things are there's a lot of challenge and there's a lot of suffering in this time. And I'm not wanting to, discredit or demean that in any way. I certainly have been through my fair share. I know what that's like. And it's almost a revolutionary choice at this point in time to choose love and to choose joy and innocent wonder at the beauty in the world and just the gift of life that we get to be here right now. And so coming back to that gratitude, and it's simple, and it affects our cells, it affects our DNA. It is it's like the vehicle, I feel like, that's taking us through this portal of initiation right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that you shared that because I try my best to stay out of worry. I try my best to, filter my brain with things that I want it to hold. I listen to a lot of binaural beats. There's just a lot of I'm very much a steward for what comes into my energy field. And naturally I have some moments of worry because sometimes we do get hit with the fear porn.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have to just remember, like, no amount of me worrying about this is going to make this change.
Mm-hmm.
Like, my worry is not changing the world. My worry is not well, it is changing my personal experience, but not in the direction that I want it to go. And it doesn't mean that there aren't concerning things happening. Of course there are. And what I'm hearing you say behind all of this which we talk about a lot, is like we chose to be here.
Mhm.
Some would say that there's a lineup of souls that are like, oh my God, when do I get on planet Earth? That's an amazing growth opportunity. Let me in, right? You want out? Awesome. I'll take your spot, right? Of course, when we're living in it through our human consciousness, we're like, what in the world? And why did I think this was a good idea to sign up for this? But spiritually
Right.
speaking, we know that we really are not here by accident. And there's a reason why we're being called to be here now. And part of our journey in that is to determine what that is and what our contribution is going to be to this experience and how we're going to let this experience be a contribution to us. So I
Absolutely.
know that you've got a lot of juicy things that you're offering through your business. I'm curious to hear, because we haven't really touched on that. And I know that you do a lot of, ascension type of things with people. So can you maybe share a little bit about how you take your bigger concepts and apply it to your business?
Sure, thank you. So I basically have distilled this process that I've gone through in the last 10 years. And like I have done so much healing through all of these insights and initiations. And I've made a process from that I call the Molten Roots method. And I use that to help my clients go through I basically have two programs that I work with people on. One is developing your psychic gifts and really unlocking um, how to be a quantum human and all of the ways that you can master the journey of mastery of the different cities that we have, and everyone has their own gifts that they bring, and some things are more innate and some things can be practiced and taught. And then from that, I also work with people in launching, their visions. I call it the Birth Your Vision coaching. And I find that as people walk this path, you reach a point. I reached a point. I know many that you're just like, I can't do the 9 to 5 anymore. Like there is so much. I am here for so much more. And once you really own that, there's no going back. So then it's, how do I bring my gifts into the world, and how do I be supported in that and create something that's sustainable? And so the theme for me in both of these programs is sovereignty. It's sovereignty of your energy and your mind and your emotions and your gifts, and outside of the system, like removing the lens of the patriarchy and the man. um, and reclaiming all of those parts, especially as women. Um, Bringing in the soul retrieval, coming into wholeness, and then sharing that with the world, bringing your gifts forth, because we, like you said, we are here. We did choose to come here for a reason, and there's a burning desire in those of us who have touched that, that you just, it doesn't leave you, and when you're not on your path. And so I think there's a challenge to make our paths, find, like, weed weed out the underbrush, and find the clear path that is really um, going to be bringing us into our place of greatest service and greatest, like, support. So that's my service, is helping. My personal vision is to see as many people come into their sovereign service as possible, because that is what we need. You are here, you have a message, share that, get that out there. There's so many fears that keep us small and keep us from being seen, and held in our traumas that are often so ancestral. And this is the time, and we're receiving the energies, and we're receiving the codes and the tools and the connectiveness unlike any other time in history, to move through all of these things that are blocking us and our limitations, like, faster than ever. Just see this exponential path of growth for anyone who chooses it. And it really is a choice. All of it comes back to choice.
Mm. Ain't that the truth? Wow. That's beautiful. I really appreciate you sharing that. So
Mm.
people are naturally going to want to be following what you're up to and staying in touch with you. So what's the best way for them to do that?
Thank you. So I'm on social media. Uplight Your Life is my Instagram handle, and that's also my Facebook business page. Karina Allison, Allison, and Karina is Karina. That's my personal page on Facebook. And my website is uplightyourlife.com. And it is currently getting a facelift. So if you check it now, check back in another month. It'll look really different. And
Websites are kind of weird right now, right? Because we have them, but we most times are doing business on social media anyways. So it's
right.
kind of like we need them to look, official, but really most business and transactions are happening, on social media.
Oh,
So I
really.
hear what you're saying. Well, I'm so grateful that you joined us today to share. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say also I'm gonna be leading volcano trips. If anyone out there is interested in going to meet erupting volcanoes, as soon as we can travel again, I'm planning 4 trips in 2022 to Italy and Vanuatu and Iceland and Big Island. So
Oh,
that's
wow.
another realm of my business that had taken a back seat during COVID. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so thank you so
Yay,
much. I'm
wow, that
just so
sounds fun.
grateful.
Definitely going to check that out for sure. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate you taking the time to share your wisdom today. And thanks to all of you for being with us today. We're going to wrap up for today and we'll see you again next time. Bye for